The Boeing 777 was crashing. All systems failing. 302 passengers about to die. The captain made an impossible call, "Ghost, we need you now." A 12-year-old girl in row 9 stood up. Everyone stared. Nobody understood. But she walked to the cockpit carrying knowledge that would save them all. Before watching full story, comment below from where you watching. Also like and subscribe for more stories. A 12-year-old girl just saved 302 lives at 39,000 feet. She wasn't supposed to be in the cockpit. She wasn't supposed to know secret Navy pilot procedures. She was just supposed to sit quietly in her middle seat and read her book. But when the captain's desperate voice came over the speaker saying, "Ghost, we need you now," everything changed. Before I tell you this incredible true story, let me ask you something. Comment below and tell me which country you're watching from. And if you love amazing real-life stories like this, hit that subscribe button because you won't believe what happens next. Maya Reeves looked like any other kid walking through Seattle Airport that Tuesday morning. She had a school backpack over one shoulder. She wore jeans, sneakers, and a faded NASA hoodie. Her dark hair was in a simple ponytail. Big headphones covered her ears. She was 12 years old. 7th grade. Flying alone to visit her aunt in Boston. Nothing special. Nothing unusual. Just another unaccompanied minor that airlines deal with every single day. The gate agent smiled at her. "Traveling alone today, sweetie?" "Yes, ma'am," Maya answered politely. "Visiting my aunt." The agent clipped a bright yellow lanyard to Maya's backpack. The tag that says, "Unaccompanied minor," so the flight attendants know to watch her. "You can board now with our early passengers." Maya nodded and walked down the jet bridge. Nobody gave her a second look. She was invisible. Just another kid in a crowd of busy adults rushing to their important meetings and destinations. The Boeing 777 was massive. One of the biggest passenger planes in the sky. This one was configured to carry 302 passengers on the 5-hour flight from Seattle to Boston. Maya found her seat. Row 9, Seat C. The dreaded middle seat between two businessmen who were already buried in their laptops. She squeezed into her seat. Neither man even looked at her. She pulled out a thick book from her backpack and started reading. The businessman to her left glanced at the cover and raised an eyebrow. Advanced Aircraft Systems and Emergency Procedures. Weird book for a kid. But he shrugged and went back to his spreadsheet. Kids read strange things these days. A flight attendant stopped by. Her name tag said Jennifer. "Hi there. I'm Jennifer and I'll be checking on you during the flight. You just let me know if you need anything, okay?" "Thank you," Maya said quietly. Jennifer leaned in, genuinely curious. "What are you reading? That looks pretty advanced." "Just some stuff about planes," Maya answered. "I like aviation." Jennifer smiled. "Well, you're in the right place then. Maybe someday you'll be flying one of these big birds." She patted Maya's shoulder and moved on to check the other passengers. Maya returned to her book. To the chapter she had read 17 times before. Chapter 8, Hydraulic System Failures and Emergency Protocols. She knew every word by heart. She had memorized it because her mother had made her memorize it. Along with dozens of other procedures and technical manuals that most 12-year-olds would never even see. You see, Maya wasn't really ordinary at all. Her mother was Commander Sarah "Phantom" Reeves. One of the first women to fly F-18 Super Hornet fighter jets in combat. A legend in naval aviation. A pilot so skilled that her call sign, Phantom, became legendary. She could make an aircraft do things that seemed impossible. She could land on an aircraft carrier in seas that looked like mountains. She could fly through weather that grounded other pilots. And she had taught her daughter everything. Maya remembered sitting in their garage on weekends. Her mother had somehow acquired an old ejection seat. Maya would sit in it while her mom called out emergency scenarios. "Okay, Ghost, you've got hydraulic failure, flight controls are degraded, and you're 60 miles from the carrier in bad weather. What do you do?" Ghost. That was Maya's call sign. The younger version of Phantom. Maya would close her eyes and recite the procedures step by step, exactly as her mother taught her. When she got it right, Phantom would smile, that rare smile that made Maya feel like she could fly without a plane. When she got it wrong, they would go through it again and again until it was perfect. "Why do I need to know this, Mom?" Maya had asked once, frustrated. "I'm just a kid. I'm never going to fly a Navy fighter." Her mother had knelt down, looking her straight in the eyes. "Ghost, listen to me. Knowledge doesn't die unless we let it die. I've learned things that exist nowhere except in my head. Procedures I've developed. Solutions I've figured out in emergencies that never made it into any manual. If something happens to me, all that knowledge disappears unless I pass it on." She had gripped Maya's shoulders. "You're smart enough to understand this stuff. You're disciplined enough to remember it. Someday, someone might need what I'm teaching you. And on that day, you'll be ready." 18 months ago, Commander Sarah Phantom Reeves died during routine carrier operations in the Pacific. The official report said catastrophic mechanical failure during landing approach. Aircraft lost. Pilot killed instantly. Maya had been at school when the Navy officers came to notify her aunt. They gave her mother's personal effects in a cardboard box. Inside was Phantom's helmet, her flight suit patch, her dog tags, and a sealed envelope addressed to Ghost. Inside was a letter in her mother's handwriting. "Ghost, if you're reading this, I'm gone. Don't let what I taught you disappear. Someone, someday, will need it. Be ready. Be brave. Make me proud. Love always, Phantom." Maya had kept that letter in her backpack every day since. She touched it now through the canvas as the 777 accelerated down the runway and lifted into the Seattle sky. The flight proceeded normally. Flight attendants came through with drinks and snacks. Maya accepted a ginger ale and returned to her book. The businessmen on either side of her dozed off. The cabin settled into that peculiar quiet of a long flight. Hundreds of people suspended in a metal tube 7 miles above the earth, trusting that everything would work exactly as designed. In the cockpit, Captain David Chen reviewed the flight plan with his first officer, Jake Morrison. Chen was 48 years old. A former Navy pilot himself who had transitioned to commercial aviation after 15 years flying F-by-a-18s. He had flown from carriers in the Persian Gulf. Now he commanded one of the largest passenger jets in the sky. Chen kept a small photo on his phone. A picture of him and his old carrier Air Wing from 12 years ago. In the front row, with that characteristic confident smile, was Commander Sarah Phantom Reeves. She had saved his life during a combat mission over the Gulf. Had talked him through an emergency when his hydraulic systems failed and every procedure he tried made things worse. She had used some unconventional technique she had developed. Something that wasn't in any manual. And she had brought him home alive. You don't forget when someone saves your life. He had heard about her death 18 months ago. The naval aviation community was tight-knit. News of a fallen pilot spread fast. He had wanted to attend the funeral but had been overseas. He had sent flowers with a note, "Phantom saved my life. She was the best of us." He knew she had had a daughter. He remembered Phantom showing him photos once. Talking about her kid who loved aviation, who asked a million questions about flying. What was her name? Maya, he thought. Little Maya Reeves. He glanced at the passenger manifest on his tablet, scanning the names out of habit. His eye caught on one entry, M. Reeves, row 9, seat C, unaccompanied minor. Could it be? Chen felt a strange tightness in his chest. Phantom's daughter on his flight. He made a mental note to have the flight attendants check on her. Maybe send her a message. He would tell her that her mother was a hero. That Phantom had saved his life. Beautiful day for flying, Morrison commented, looking out at the clear blue sky. They were at 39,000 feet. Cruising smoothly. Autopilot engaged. Systems nominal. Chen nodded. Let's hope it stays boring. But even as he said it, a small amber light flickered on the hydraulic system panel. Chen frowned and tapped the gauge. The light steadied. Probably nothing. These systems had redundancies upon redundancies. One little glitch meant nothing. Then another light. Electrical system secondary bus. Chen's frown deepened. Morrison noticed too. Sir, we've got a caution light on the backup electrical. I see it, Chen said, his voice calm but focused. He reached for the quick reference handbook. Let's run the checklist. They began working through the procedures. Methodical. Professional. This was when training took over. When thousands of hours of practice made pilots move with automatic precision. But even as they worked through the checklist, more lights appeared. Hydraulic pressure dropping on System B. Primary flight computer showing degraded status. Backup pump pressure fluctuating. This doesn't make sense, Morrison said, his voice tight. These systems are independent. They shouldn't all be failing together. Chen's mind raced. He had seen this before. Not exactly this, but something close. Years ago in an F/A-18 when multiple systems had cascaded into failure. When every procedure he tried made things worse. When Phantom had talked him through an emergency that shouldn't have been survivable. More alarms. The aircraft shuddered slightly as flight control authority degraded. Chen disconnected the autopilot and took manual control. The yoke felt mushy. Unresponsive. He could feel the aircraft wanting to drift. Could feel the systems dying under his hands. Declare an emergency, he told Morrison. Tell ATC we need priority routing and we need to get on the ground now. Morrison keyed the radio, his voice professionally calm despite the fear Chen could see in his eyes. Center, United 2847, declaring an emergency. We have multiple system failures and are requesting immediate vectors to nearest suitable airport. The controller's response was immediate and urgent. United 2847, Roger, understand emergency declared. Nearest suitable airport is Denver International, bearing 095, distance 180 miles. Vectors when ready. Chen turned the aircraft, feeling the sluggish response. They weren't going to make 180 miles. They might not make 80 miles. The hydraulic systems were dying. Which meant the flight controls were dying. Which meant they were going to have a 300-ton glider with 302 people on board. Chen tried every procedure he knew. Backup hydraulic pump online. But pressure still dropping. Emergency electrical engaged. But systems still degrading. Manual trim barely responding. Nothing was working. It was like the aircraft was dying system by system and he couldn't stop it. And then he recognized the pattern. It was exactly, like the emergency he had had 12 years ago. The same cascade of failures. The same combination of hydraulic and electrical degradation. The same way each attempted fix made things slightly worse. It was impossible. These were different aircraft. Different systems. Different circumstances. But the pattern was identical. Phantom had saved him then using a procedure she developed herself. Something she called the Phantom Protocol. She had manually cross-connected the backup hydraulic pump to the primary control circuit while simultaneously reducing electrical load by exactly 60%. Creating a feedback loop that stabilized both systems long enough to get on the ground. It wasn't in any manual. It violated 3 different standard procedures. And it had saved his life. If only Phantom were here now. If only she could tell him the exact sequence. The precise steps. Because he remembered the concept but not the details. And getting the details wrong would kill everyone on this aircraft. Chen's heart was pounding. Sweat ran down his face. Morrison was working through emergency procedures, but Chen could see the same growing desperation in his first officer's movements. They were running out of options. And then Chen remembered the passenger manifest. M. Reeves. Row 9, Seat C. Phantom's daughter. His hand was shaking as he grabbed the intercom. This was insane. The kid would be what, 13? 14? But Phantom had loved her daughter. Had talked about teaching her aviation. About how bright she was. Had Phantom taught her the protocol? It was impossible. But they were out of options. Chen keyed the intercom, his voice tight with desperation. Passenger Maya Reeves in row 9. This is Captain Chen. I flew with your mother. He paused. This was crazy. He was calling for a child to save an aircraft. But Phantom had had a call sign for her daughter. He remembered that. What was it? Ghost. Phantom and Ghost. The younger version of the legend. Ghost, he said, his voice breaking. We need you now. In row 9, Maya's world stopped. She had been reading, absorbed in a technical description of backup pump configurations, when the captain's voice came through the speakers. Her name. Captain Chen. I flew with your mother. And then the call sign. The name nobody had used in 18 months. The name her mother had given her. Ghost, we need you now. Maya sat frozen, her book forgotten in her lap. The businessmen on either side of her were suddenly alert. Confused. Looking around to see who the captain was talking to. Flight attendants in the aisle had stopped moving. Staring at the speakers. The entire cabin had gone silent. 300 people, all of them wondering who Ghost was. Why the captain sounded so desperate. Maya's hands were shaking. She pressed them flat on the book in her lap. The book about emergency procedures. The book her mother had made her read over and over. She could hear Phantom's voice in her head. Crystal clear. When someone calls for Ghost, you answer. No matter what. That's what warriors do. She unbuckled her seatbelt and stood up. The businessman to her left grabbed her arm. Kid, you need to stay in your seat. The captain didn't mean. Maya looked at him with eyes that suddenly seemed much older than 12. He called for Ghost. That's my call sign. My mother was Phantom. Let me go. She pulled her arm free and stepped into the aisle. Jennifer, the flight attendant, was rushing down from first class. Her professional smile replaced by genuine concern. Sweetie, you can't, you need to sit down. Whatever the captain said, I'm sure. I'm Ghost, Maya said quietly but with absolute certainty. My mother was Commander Sarah Phantom Reeves, United States Navy. Captain Chen flew with her. He needs me in the cockpit. Now. Jennifer stared at this small 12-year-old girl who suddenly didn't seem small at all. I need to verify with the captain. Then verify quickly, Maya said. People are going to die if you don't. Jennifer grabbed the intercom phone, her hand shaking. Captain, this is Jennifer in the main cabin. There's a young girl here who says she's Ghost, that her mother was. Chen's voice cut her off, sharp and urgent. Send her forward now. Bring her to the cockpit. Immediately. Jennifer hung up, her face pale. She looked at Maya, really looked at her, and saw something that made her shiver. A calmness. A focus that shouldn't exist in a child. Follow me, she said. Maya walked forward through the silent cabin. Every passenger watched her pass. This small girl in jeans and a NASA hoodie, walking toward the cockpit with steady steps while the aircraft shuddered around them. They could feel that something was wrong now. The shuddering. The unusual engine sounds. The captain's desperate call. And this child was walking forward like she had somewhere important to be. A woman reached out and touched Maya's arm as she passed. "Be safe, sweetheart," she whispered. Maya nodded. The cockpit door was already open. Captain Chen had turned in his seat, and when he saw her, his eyes filled with tears. The face was different. Phantom's face, but younger, softer, still showing the roundness of childhood. But the eyes. Those were Phantom's eyes. Exactly. That same sharp intelligence. That same steady focus. "You're Phantom's daughter," Chen said, his voice breaking. "Your ghost." Maya nodded. She stepped into the cockpit and her eyes immediately scanned the instrument panel. Taking in the warning lights. The system failures. The degraded controls. She saw the pattern instantly. The same pattern her mother had drilled into her head. "You're experiencing cascading hydraulic and electrical failures," she said calmly. "Each system's backup is degrading the other through feedback interference. You've tried standard procedures, but they're not working because the failure pattern is non-standard." Chen stared. Morrison stared. This 12-year-old had just diagnosed their emergency in 5 seconds. "Mom taught me about this," Maya continued. "She called it the triple system cascade. It happened to you 12 years ago over the Gulf. She saved you using a procedure she developed. She called it the Phantom Protocol." She paused. "She made me memorize it." Chen felt like he couldn't breathe. You know the procedure. The exact sequence." Maya met his eyes. "She made me practice it 50 times. She said someday someone might need it. She said knowledge shouldn't die." She paused. "Today is that someday, Captain. And I remember every step." Morrison found his voice. "Sir, what is she talking about?" Chen gripped the yoke tighter, feeling the aircraft continuing to degrade. "It's an emergency procedure her mother pioneered. It saved my life. If Ghost knows it, we have a chance." He looked at Maya. "Tell me. Step by step. Every detail." Maya took a breath. In her mind, she heard her mother's voice. Patient and clear. "Okay, Ghost. From the top." "First," Maya said, her voice steady and clear, "you need to manually isolate the backup hydraulic pump from the primary circuit. Captain, reach under the center pedestal. There's a red manual valve 3 inches behind the primary pump control. Turn it 90 degrees counterclockwise. That breaks the feedback loop." Chen reached down, feeling for the valve. His fingers found it. He had never even noticed it before. Hadn't known it could be manually controlled. He turned it. A slight change in the hydraulic pressure gauge. "Good," Maya said. "Now, First Officer Morrison, you need to reduce electrical load by exactly 60%. No more, no less. Start by disabling all non-essential bus systems. That's switches 7 through 14 on the electrical panel. The ones with the yellow guards. Flip them all off." Morrison's hands moved, flipping switches. Lights went dark in the cabin. Systems powered down. "Now, here's the critical part," Maya continued. "Captain, you need to manually engage the secondary hydraulic pump, but not through the normal control. Use the emergency manual override. It's the lever behind your right shoulder. Red handle. Pull it down exactly 3 inches. Then hold it there. Don't let it go all the way down or you'll overpressure the system." Chen reached back, found the handle Maya described. He pulled it down, feeling for the right position. 3 inches. He held it there. Morrison, now restart electrical bus 3 and 5 only. Those will create a balanced load that lets the hydraulic pressure stabilize without feedback interference. Mon figured out this specific combination after analyzing 17 different system configurations. Morrison's hands moved across the panel, following instructions from a 12-year-old girl as if their lives depended on it. Because their lives did depend on it. You should see hydraulic pressure beginning to stabilize now, Maya said. Not recovering to normal, but stabilizing around 45%. That's enough for control authority if you manage it carefully. Chen watched the gauge. She was right. The pressure was holding at 47%. Not good, but survivable. He could feel the yoke responding better. It's working, he breathed. Now for the electrical recovery, Maya continued. Morrison, you need to cross-connect the backup generator to the primary bus, but only after you've reduced the load. Switch 22 behind the throttles. Flip it to the backup crossfeed position. There is no backup crossfeed position, Morrison said, his voice uncertain. Yes, there is, Maya said. It's between normal and emergency. You have to hold the switch at exactly the midpoint. Mom said most pilots never notice it because you have to hold it precisely there. If you let it slip to either side, the connection breaks. Morrison found the switch. Held it carefully in the position Maya described. The electrical systems began to stabilize. Captain, Maya said, you can release the hydraulic override now, but slowly. Let it rise back up over 10 seconds. That gives the systems time to equalize without causing another feedback spike. Chen slowly released the handle, counting in his head. The pressure held. The warning lights didn't multiply. The aircraft was still flying. Maya watched the instruments with an expert eye that belonged to someone 3 times her age. You're going to have about 60% of normal control authority, she said. That's enough to land, but you need to use minimal control inputs. Gentle turns. Shallow descent rate. Don't try anything aggressive or you'll destabilize the systems again. Chen keyed the radio. Center, United 2847. Systems are stabilized. Still need priority handling, but we can make it to Denver now. The controller's relief was audible. Roger, 2847, cleared direct Denver. Descend pilot discretion. Fire equipment will be standing by. Chen initiated a gentle descent, feeling the aircraft respond sluggishly but adequately. He looked at Maya. This small girl who had just saved 302 lives. How did you? Your mother taught you all this? Maya nodded. She taught me everything. She said her knowledge shouldn't die with her. She made me memorize procedures. Emergency protocols. Things she had figured out that weren't in any manual. She gave me the call sign Ghost, younger version of Phantom. She said someday it might matter. Morrison was staring at her. You're 12 years old. 12 and a half, Maya corrected. Mom started teaching me when I was 7. She said age doesn't matter when it comes to knowledge. Either you know it or you don't. Chen felt tears running down his face. Your mother saved my life 12 years ago using this exact procedure. And now she's saved it again. Through you. The Phantom Protocol, Maya said softly. She developed it after she saved you. She studied the failure pattern. Figured out exactly why standard procedures failed. Designed a solution. She taught it to me because she said if it happened once, it could happen again. She paused. She was right. The descent to Denver took 35 minutes. Maya stayed in the cockpit, watching the instruments, calling out any anomalies before Chen and Morrison noticed them. She guided them through the landing configuration, warning them which settings would destabilize the delicate balance they had achieved. Keep your approach speed 10 knots higher than normal, she advised. The reduced hydraulic pressure means the flight controls will respond slower. You need the extra speed for authority. Chen followed her guidance. The aircraft came in high and fast, but stable. The runway appeared through the windscreen. Fire trucks lined the taxiway, waiting. Chen eased the throttles back, raised the nose slightly, and felt the main gear touch with a solid thump. Reversers deployed. The aircraft decelerated smoothly. They were down. Safe. All 302 souls aboard. Chen brought the aircraft to a stop on the taxiway. Emergency vehicles surrounded them, but there was no fire. No smoke. No crisis. Just a very tired Boeing 777 that had been convinced to fly a little bit longer by a procedure that existed nowhere except in one girl's memory. Chen shut down the engines and turned to Maya. She suddenly looked very small again. Very young. Standing in the cockpit in her jeans and NASA hoodie. The professional calmness had faded from her face, and now she just looked like a frightened kid who had been very brave for a very long time. Chen unbuckled and wrapped his arms around her. Maya buried her face in his shoulder and started to cry. The first tears she had allowed herself to shed since walking forward from row 9. Your mother saved my life twice, Chen said, his own tears flowing freely. Once 12 years ago when she flew my wing. And today through you. The Phantom Protocol just saved 302 people. She's still saving lives, Ghost. Your mother is still saving lives. Maya's voice was muffled against his shoulder. She said her knowledge shouldn't die with her. She said if I remembered everything, someday it might matter. Today it mattered, Chen said. Morrison put his hand on her shoulder. You're a hero, kid. You just saved everyone on this aircraft. Maya pulled back, wiping her eyes. I'm not a hero. I just remembered what Mom taught me. She's the hero. Phantom is always the hero. The cabin door opened and Jennifer appeared, her face showing the strain of keeping 300 confused passengers calm during an emergency. Behind her, passengers were craning their necks, trying to see into the cockpit. Trying to understand who the child was that the captain had called forward. We need to deplane, Jennifer said quietly. The passengers are scared. They need to know we're safe. Chen nodded. He looked at Maya. Are you ready to face them? They're going to want to know who you are. What happened? Maya straightened her shoulders. She reached into her backpack and pulled out her mother's letter. The one Phantom had left for her. The one she carried everywhere. She unfolded it and read the last lines again. Be ready. Be brave. Make me proud. I'm ready, she said. They walked out of the cockpit together. Captain Chen, First Officer Morrison, and the 12-year-old girl who had saved them all. The passengers fell silent as they emerged. Seeing the captain with his arm around the child from row 9. Seeing the tears on both their faces. Chen cleared his throat. Ladies and gentlemen, I need to tell you what just happened. We experienced a catastrophic multiple system failure. Something that shouldn't be survivable according to standard procedures. We were going down. He paused, his voice breaking. But there was someone on this aircraft who knew a procedure that isn't in any manual. A procedure developed by one of the greatest pilots who ever lived. That person is Maya Ghost Reeves, daughter of Commander Sarah Phantom Reeves, United States Navy. He gestured to Maya. This child carried knowledge her mother taught her before she died. Knowledge that saved every single person on this aircraft. When I called for Ghost, she answered. She walked forward and guided us through an emergency procedure that exists nowhere except in her memory. He looked at Maya, his voice filled with emotion. She saved 302 lives today. The cabin remained silent for a heartbeat. Then someone started clapping. Then another. Then everyone. Every passenger. Every flight attendant. Everyone who had been on that aircraft erupted in applause and tears and shouts of gratitude. They rushed forward, wanting to thank her. To touch her. To somehow express what they couldn't put into words. The businessman from seat 9B was there, tears streaming down his face. "I ignored you," he said. "I sat next to you for an hour and thought you were just some kid. You saved my life." A mother with 2 small children from row 8 hugged Maya so hard she could barely breathe. "You saved my babies. Thank you. Thank you." An elderly man shook her hand, his voice trembling. "I get to see my grandchildren because of you." A young woman, maybe 25, knelt down to Maya's eye level. "I'm getting married next month. I'm getting married because you were brave. Thank you." Maya stood in the center of it all, overwhelmed. Still just a 12-year-old girl who missed her mother and wanted to make her proud. She looked up at Captain Chen through her tears. "Did I do okay?" she asked quietly, her voice almost lost in the commotion. "Would Mom be proud?" Chen knelt down so he was at her eye level. "Ghost, your mother is so proud of you right now. Wherever Phantom is, she's watching you and she's smiling. You carried her legacy. You proved that her knowledge, her brilliance, her courage, none of it died with her. It lives on in you." The passengers were evacuated down the emergency slides. Standard procedure after any emergency landing. Maya came down last, holding Jennifer's hand, still looking dazed by everything that had happened. The airport terminal was chaos. News crews had already arrived, alerted by the emergency declaration. Federal aviation investigators were mobilizing. Airline executives were rushing to the scene. Everyone wanted to know what had happened. How a triple system failure had been survived. The investigation took 3 weeks. Investigators pulled apart every system on that aircraft. Analyzed every failure. Reviewed every decision Chen and Morrison had made. They interviewed Maya for hours, asking her to explain the Phantom Protocol in detail. To describe exactly what her mother had taught her. A Navy admiral came to interview her personally. Someone who had served with Phantom. Who remembered her brilliance and her courage. He listened as 12-year-old Maya explained technical procedures that most veteran pilots didn't know existed. "Commander Reeves was teaching you classified procedures," he said carefully. "Procedures she developed during her service. That's unusual." Maya met his eyes steadily. "My mother said that knowledge is too important to let die. She said procedures that save lives should be passed on, not buried with the people who developed them. She said that secrecy might protect systems, but sharing knowledge protects people." She paused. She chose people. The admiral was quiet for a long moment. Then he smiled. A sad smile that held enormous respect. "Phantom always chose people. That's why we loved her. That's why she was the best of us." The final investigation report concluded that Flight 2847 had experienced a cascading failure pattern so rare that it had only been documented once before, 12 years earlier, in a combat zone, when Commander Sarah Reeves had pioneered an unconventional solution. The report recommended that the Phantom Protocol be officially incorporated into emergency training procedures for all commercial aircraft. Maya's mother's knowledge would now be passed on to every pilot. Saving lives forever. 3 months later, Maya stood in a Navy hangar in San Diego. She had been invited to a ceremony honoring her mother. The Navy was posthumously awarding Commander Sarah Phantom Reeves the Distinguished Flying Cross for developing procedures that had now saved hundreds of lives. Maya wore a simple dress. Her mother's dog tags around her neck, the ones that had been returned to her in that cardboard box 18 months ago. She felt small standing before all these Navy officers and pilots. All these warriors who had known her mother. The admiral who had interviewed her stepped forward with the medal. A bronze cross with an eagle, representing heroism in flight. "Normally," he said, "we would present this medal to the next of kin. But Commander Reeves' daughter is more than just next of kin. She is the carrier of her mother's legacy. She is the keeper of Phantom's knowledge. He paused. So today we present this medal to Ghost, with gratitude for answering the call when her nation needed her. He pinned the medal to Maya's dress. She touched it with trembling fingers, feeling the weight of it. Feeling the weight of everything it represented. After the ceremony, Chen found her standing alone, looking at a photograph of her mother in her flight suit, standing beside an F-18 Super Hornet. The image showed Phantom smiling. Confident. Ready for anything. Missing her? Chen asked gently. Maya nodded, not trusting her voice. Chen stood beside her, looking at the photo of his old wingman. I think about her every time I fly. Every time I face a problem I don't know how to solve, I think, what would Phantom do? She had this way of seeing solutions that nobody else saw. Of finding answers in places we didn't think to look. She was teaching me to think like that, Maya said softly. Not just to remember procedures, but to understand why they work. To see patterns. To find solutions. Is that why you knew what to do so quickly? Chen asked. Because you didn't just memorize the steps, you understood them. Maya nodded. Mom said memorization was the beginning, not the end. She said I needed to understand the system so well that I could adapt the procedure if something was different. She paused. That day on your flight, the failure pattern wasn't exactly the same as what happened to you 12 years ago. I had to modify some of the steps because your aircraft has different hydraulic configurations than the F-18. Mom taught me how to think through problems, not just how to follow checklists. Chen stared at her with renewed amazement. You adapted her procedure on the fly? During the emergency? 3 small changes, Maya confirmed. The valve positions were different. The electrical bus configuration wasn't the same. And the timing had to be adjusted for the larger hydraulic system. But the underlying principle was the same: break the feedback loop, balance the loads, create stability. Mom taught me the principle. I applied it to your situation. Chen felt chills running down his spine. This child hadn't just memorized a procedure. She had understood it deeply enough to modify it for a completely different aircraft, under pressure, with 302 lives depending on her getting it right. You're just like her, he said quietly. You have her gift. That ability to see how systems work. To understand them at a level that most people never reach. Phantom didn't just teach you what to do. She taught you how to think. Maya looked back at her mother's photograph. I wish she was here. I want to tell her that it worked. That her teaching mattered. That I didn't let her down. Ghost, Chen said firmly. Your mother knows. Wherever she is, whatever happens after we die, Phantom knows what you did. And she's prouder than you can possibly imagine. He put his hand on her shoulder. You didn't just save 302 people. You proved that her belief in you was right. You proved that knowledge can live on. You proved that even when we lose the warriors we love, their legacy continues through the people they taught. 5 years later, Maya graduated from high school. She had been accepted to MIT with a full scholarship to study aeronautical engineering. She was going to design aircraft systems. Going to make planes safer, smarter, better. She was going to carry on what Phantom had started. Captain Chen attended her graduation. He had stayed in touch over the years. Had become something like an uncle to her. One of the people who remembered Phantom and could tell stories about her. At the graduation party, Chen pulled Maya aside. I have something for you, he said. He handed her a small box. Inside was a pair of aviator's wings. The same wings that Navy pilots wore on their uniforms. But these wings were special. They had belonged to Phantom. Your mother gave these to me after she saved my life, Chen explained. She said, keep them until you meet someone who deserves them more than me. I didn't understand what she meant at the time. But now I do. He smiled. She meant you, Ghost. She knew someday you'd earn these wings. Not by flying, but by doing something even more important. By keeping her knowledge alive. By making sure her legacy continued. By being brave enough to answer when someone called for Ghost. Maya held the wings with trembling hands. They were worn from years of wear. Scratched from carrier operations. Marked by the life her mother had lived. And now they were hers. "Thank you," she whispered. "I'll take care of them. I'll honor them." "You already have," Chen said. "You've honored them every day since you walked forward on Flight 2847. You've honored them by being exactly who Phantom raised you to be, smart, brave, and willing to share what you know so others can benefit." That night, Maya stood alone in her room, holding her mother's wings. She thought about the scared 12-year-old who had sat in row 9 5 years ago. Just a kid with a backpack and a book. She thought about the moment Chen had called for Ghost. About the walk to the cockpit. About guiding 2 pilots through a procedure that existed nowhere but in her memory. She thought about all the people alive today because Phantom had refused to let knowledge die. The 302 passengers from Flight 2847. The pilots who had learned the Phantom protocol and would use it someday to save others. The engineers and safety officials who had been inspired to share their knowledge more freely. All of them were living proof that one person's determination to preserve and pass on knowledge could ripple outward. Could save lives across years and distances. Maya pinned her mother's wings to her graduation gown. Then she took out the letter, worn now to the point of fragility, and read it one more time. "Ghost, if you're reading this, I'm gone. Don't let what I taught you disappear. Someone, someday, will need it. Be ready. Be brave. Make me proud. Love always, Phantom." "I did it, Mom," Maya said to the empty room. To the memory of the woman who had taught her everything. "I kept your knowledge alive. I answered when someone called for Ghost. I made you proud." She paused, looking at the wings in her hands. "And now I'm going to spend my life doing what you did. Learning things. Figuring things out. And making sure it all gets passed on. Your legacy doesn't end with me. It continues through me." Somewhere over the Pacific Ocean right now, a commercial airline pilot sits in her cockpit, monitoring her instruments. If her systems ever begin to fail in that specific pattern, that rare cascade of hydraulic and electrical degradation, she will reach for her emergency handbook. And she will find a new section that didn't exist 5 years ago. Phantom Protocol, Emergency Procedure for Cascading Hydraulic and Electrical Failures. She will read through the procedure. Understanding it. Absorbing it. Hoping she'll never need it. But grateful it exists. At the bottom of the procedure, there is a note. Developed by Commander Sarah Phantom Reeves, USN. Preserved and shared by her daughter, Maya Ghost Reeves. Knowledge should never die with those who possess it. Because that's the real lesson Ghost taught the world. Not that a 12-year-old can save a plane. But that everyone has something valuable to share. And sharing it is how we make the world safer for everyone who comes after us. Knowledge should never die with those who possess it. We save lives by sharing what we know. We honor those who taught us by teaching others. And when someone calls for help, no matter how unlikely we are, no matter how impossible the situation seems, we answer. We answer because that's what Phantom taught Ghost. And that's what Ghost teaches all of us.